Live from Miami, Florida, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to Patriots Perspective with Christi Tasker. Your news behind the government's facade. Don't fall victim to propaganda or spend another 30 days in the tech gulag. Turn off your tell lie vision and just listen. Hear the most mind-opening hours of your life as we interview whistleblowers and real patriots for uncensored truth. The Commie News Network and Fake Book cannot control the power of Jesus Christ. Therefore, they have no power over us. There aren't enough Vegas strippers to fake check what's coming. Put in your earphones and avoid the tech tyrants. Subscribe to PatriotsPerspective.com now and see the evidence and action items to help you take back your God-given rights, government, and expose Satan and his demons taking up residence in your community. Be sure to hit the like or rumble button and comment to tell us where you're holding the line.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I have with me, thank you for, first of all, joining me here at Patriots Perspective. We have breaking news coming directly out of the White House, which we have confirmed that we are breaking here exclusively on Patriots Perspective. And I have a special guest coming in with me today. His name is John Goodman. John, welcome to Patriots Perspective. And man, John has been working extremely hard here, not only in the state of Florida, but nationally. John, you have really broken some records, and the White House is aware, and we have confirmation now that they are listening to you. So I'm very glad to have you on today, John, and I look forward to my audience and the world knowing what President Trump is actually up to, what he's going to be doing for Americans, and making sure that our elections are actually secure, because now that we have pure, concise evidence that the Chinese were inside of our elections, that gives President Trump a lot more power and a lot more executive orders and emergency orders that he can go into that I think Americans are not aware of, John. So can you take it away and tell us what you've been working on here in the state of Florida for the Florida Election Integrity Network?
Absolutely. Number one, Christi, thank you so much for having me on your show. You know, I do some podcasts, but a lot of times I just elect not to. But I came on your show because it was such highly recommended. We both have a mutual friend, Steve Stern, who is the chairman of the Florida Election Integrity Committee, basically my boss. And, you know, of course, he can't make me go on a podcast, but he said, I really recommend that you go on Patriots Perspective. It's really a well-done show. So that's why I'm here, Christi, and I appreciate you having me. So that's great. Steve Stern loves your show.
Oh, thank you. I had him on. If you guys didn't see my episode with Steve Stern, please make sure that you go back and watch that. He was an amazing guest. Steve is always on top of it when it comes to election integrity issues. He holds a call every single week. But John, you have been in the library dealing directly with the Constitution, because somehow, some way, you got an inkling that we needed to go back to the Constitution and look at the original Constitution. So tell us about that. Let's start there.
Okay, so yeah, let's do it in order so it's understandable for your viewers, Christi. So bottom line is, as we know, we want to first separate the difference between absentee voting and mail-in ballots, because a lot of times, Christi, they are convoluted together and they are totally different. So I want to make sure that your viewers understand that the law is absentee vote, and that is for just individuals to vote by mail, vote by home, if they meet the criteria such as overseas military, elderly, hospice, overseas civilian worker. There was about 20 to 25 criteria where you can vote by mail, and everyone else who doesn't meet the criteria to vote by mail does what we've done for the last 200 years, and that's go vote in person with your ID. And so we used absentee ballot beginning at the start of the Revolutionary War in 1775. We were even using it before the Declaration of Independence and 3 years before the Constitution was ratified. And it stayed in our system using it with no problems until the pandemic, 250 years. And then we all had to vote by mail in 2020 because of the pandemic. And I want your viewers to know that there's no such thing as mail-in ballots, okay? Mail-in ballots was a sexy name given to the way that we were forced to vote in 2020. We all had to mail in our ballots. Thus, the name mail-in ballot was born. There is nothing in the Constitution or the 1965 Voting Act, which are the two gold standards of voting laws. There's not a mention of mail-in ballots because they don't exist. And it was supposed to be a one-time deal. I was looking at a video yesterday of Nancy Pelosi in August of 2020 talking about how we're going to have to go to 100%. Everyone votes by mail because of the pandemic, and she called it a one-time deal. But it wasn't, and it hasn't been a one-time deal. And it's still embedded in our voting system, no legislation. So my goal has been with the election integrity team, my assignment is to find a way to try to take the rig out of elections. I want to explain to your viewers that on the Florida Election Integrity Committee, some committee members are in Tallahassee at the State House trying to get legislators to sponsor bills, and they actually face-to-face. We have other people that are working on the voting machines. We have other people that are they're in court trying to do paper ballots, hand count. That my assignment was the fraud of the elections due to this continuation of this national mail-in ballot, which is not in any law. So for years and years, we've all been fooled. We've all thought that the states were untouchable when it came to elections, because it does say in the Constitution that the states have primarily 100% power over elections. So for the longest time, I'm banging my head against the wall. How are we going to undo this national vote by mail when the Constitution says that the states have the authority and we can't even touch them, even if they're cheating? So as you said earlier, Christi, I could not accept the fact that even back in the 1700s, the founding fathers would give the states 100% power with no oversight at all. So I ended up at the library 3 times a week, and I was reading the Constitution on microfilm. And for your viewers who've never read the Constitution, it's a very difficult read. Some of it's in cursive, some of it's in print, some of it's dark, some of it's light, some of it's on the slanted, some of it's straight. It's a headache read, and it took me 7 weeks to read it, going 3 times a day, because it's a slow read. Well, in that Constitution, I came across this little bitty codicil, and we're going to talk about that. This little bitty codicil, and what that codicil says is that although the states do have primary control over elections, that if the states do anything or their actions in any way, this is the founding fathers speaking. The founding fathers said if the states take any actions in any way that, quote, dictate electoral outcomes unfairly, the states lose their control of the elections, and Congress is to step in and fix. So all these years, Christi and your viewers, all these years we've been under the impression, including me, that the states could do whatever the heck they wanted and there really was no recourse. Well, that has been debunked. And that's one thing we're breaking right now on your show, because nobody knows about this codicil. I've spoken to constitutional scholars who didn't even know about it. And it's amazing that they don't know about it, because it's been in the Constitution since the Constitution was ratified in 1879. And it's hard to believe. But on the other hand, I did tell you, it is a very small codicil and it is a tough read. So I guess you could give an excuse that they missed it. But God, after 200 and something years, everybody missed it. So once I found that codicil, I knew we had a chance. And Steve Stern, who we've talked about, the chairman of the Florida Election Integrity Committee, I took that codicil to him. And he put me in touch with Steve Bannon and Mike Lindell. And everyone, I think most of you knows, Mike Lindell is the owner of My Pillow. You've seen him. And Steve Bannon does Bannon's War Room, and he's also a former close advisor to President Trump in his first term. And they said, send me what you've got. We're not making any promises what we'll do. Send me what you've got. And I sent it to them. And then all of a sudden, they're calling me back. They're saying, wow. Because, again, I don't deal in hearsay, third-party sources, unnamed sources. It has to be factual. And I know on your show, same thing. You don't deal with BS. You deal with facts on Patriots Perspective. And that's why one of the reasons I'm comfortable coming here, because this show doesn't spin. This show just tells it the way it is, good, bad, or ugly. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things Steve said to me. And that's one of the things that I liked, that motivated me to contact you and say, I'll come on the show if you'll have me,
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad that you're here. And you even know, like before the show, I want to make sure that whatever I'm showing the audience, I'm showing you where the facts are coming from, how they originated, how important they are in terms of us just getting the message out, and how when we look in different parts, like for instance, Politico confirms exactly what you were saying in terms of during the coronavirus. Pelosi was quoted saying mail-in ballots will protect integrity of the election system amid the coronavirus. So she was very specific that was just for the coronavirus. However, people wanted to continue, as they often does when you open Pandora's box, or, if you have children, one of the great analogies is when you squeeze the toothpaste out, you cannot put it back in.
That's right.
But however, we are going to put it back in, or better yet, President Trump is
going
to put it in with Johnson.
We are going to put it back in. And yeah, I want to expand. What you said is a great point, Christi, and I don't want to let it go by. What you said is a really great point. The bottom line is, you're right. It was marketed by both Democrats and Republicans as a one-time deal, as I said, and thank you for getting the quote from Nancy Pelosi. But the bottom line is, the Democrats fell in love with mail-in ballots because they figured out a way to weaponize them.
Yep.
And how do we know they weaponized them? Let me tell you how. Number one, if you look at any website on the results of the 2020 election, it says Joe Biden got 81 million votes. And that's from the basement of where he ran his campaign out of the basement during a pandemic. He got 81 million votes, it says. But in 2024, Donald Trump got 4 million votes less. There you go. I told you.
This is important. Even according to Wikipedia, the election saw the highest turnout by percentage since 1900 at 81 million votes, the most votes ever cast for a presidential candidate in U.S. history.
Yes, but that's deceiving, though, because those were all through the mail.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we have to go with facts. That's what they're saying, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they're saying, because we're on YouTube, John. So YouTube says that's the way it happened, ladies and gentlemen. And that is what, actually not YouTube, but Wikipedia says that's the way it happened. So John, we're going to let our audience believe that is what happened. We have to believe that Joe Biden got the most votes since 1900. I mean, I think our audience can think much more logically than that.
Right.
That, Potato Head did not exactly get the most votes in U.S. history, or did he? Yes, according to Wikipedia, he did. So, ladies and gentlemen, we had a Potato Head for president, and we had the most mail-in ballots at the same time. So go figure.
Yeah, 81 million for Joe Biden in 2020, but in 2024, Donald Trump gets 4 million votes less, despite winning not only the Electoral College and all of the swing states, but he also won the popular vote. And still had 4 million less votes than Joe Biden? Okay, so I'm not going to...
let's get past that. Let's get past 2020. 2020 is done, right?
I know. But
Yeah,
again, that's where the fraud, that's where
yeah.
mail-in ballot fraud
Well,
first started.
but we can't say that. We cannot say that. We don't know that it's fraud.
Okay.
Okay. All we know is what the president is going to do to fix and to take us back to a constitutional elections. So that
Okay.
we
Well
can
then,
say on
well then
YouTube.
let's
Otherwise,
talk.
we
Let's
lose out,
talk.
John, with censorship. We
Okay.
like we lose out with censorship because that's it's like moving a chess piece. He's got to move this over here to move this over here to further prove that that is that those are facts. And the FBI I'm sure will come out with more information regarding the 2020 election as they are still investigating it. Because we can say what we believe, but when it comes to what the media says is there, that's what we're bound by YouTube. However, they cannot say what the news that we know of that is occurring and the evidence that you have in your bag right now or on your desktop. So I want to
Well,
get
okay,
to that.
so we do know, even according to Facebook, that Joe Biden got 81 million votes in
Yeah.
2020, and we know Donald Trump got 4 million less votes in
Yep.
2024, despite winning all the swing states and the
Yep.
popular vote, and that is also factual.
Those are
right?
factual. Those are facts.
And the reason why it's so unusual for a Republican to win the popular vote, Christi, is because the biggest population states happen to be blue states like California, Illinois, New York. So for a Republican to win the popular vote and all the swing states and still have less votes than the previous election winner, that questions things quite much. Can you put that map back up on the voting laws of absentee?
Yes.
I think we need to let the viewers know just how serious this has become, but then we're going to give you some better news coming up. We want to show you how we got to this fraud, and then we want to show you how it's going to be fixed.
Yes.
Because I don't think any of your viewers are going to be going, okay, there was the other one you had.
Okay, let's the more interactive.
That's the better map. Yeah, that's the one
Okay,
that
so we've got several. They pretty much show the same thing.
But do you have that one that has the yellow, the baby blue,
Yeah.
the one you showed me earlier?
Yep.
Okay. And I want our viewers, when they see this map, to understand, and I'll talk while you're getting that map, that there were actually, here we go. The states in yellow was only vote by mail. You couldn't go vote in person in those yellow states, even if you wanted to.
And notice it says, John, all or most voters receiving ballots. So in other words, they didn't have to ask for their ballots.
Exactly.
They just received them.
Exactly.
So we have, if you're not watching and you're listening on podcasts, we have Washington State, Oregon, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, where Tina Peters is still jailed to this day, Montana, Vermont, and New Jersey. Or most voters receiving ballots. So in other words, they may not have had to ask for their ballots. They didn't have to ask for them. They just got them because
that's right.
We had politicians out there at the same time saying, oh, well, you may be further away from the precinct. And, due to the pandemic, we are going to, limit the number of maybe machines, and you don't need to have contact with people. And here in Miami-Dade County, they wanted you to have to wear a mask to vote, John. I mean, so they weren't going to identify you anyway. And we have all of that evidence as well. So, okay, I don't mean to get off track, but it just
so bottom line is your viewers. This is a concern.
Let's also just give somebody the big picture here. Okay, so imagine going to your mailbox right now and there being a very important document there that you did not request, you don't even know about, and it looks like junk mail, so you don't even open it. Okay, but yet you may just toss it, throw it away. Well, who's going to be picking up that piece of paper, that envelope that looks like junk. Because I know in my building, I have photographs of where, we had a bin that that actually, it was basically like if you had junk mail, you want to just toss your junk mail, and you toss your junk mail in the bin. Well, anybody could reach down and pick it up. So that's what could have been also occurring in these areas. And then, there's no real way to keep track of that many voters. So I just wanted to say that because I think that's a good analogy for people to realize, like, just imagine all of this mail coming in, you getting these ballots, who knows what's happening to them. They're not taken with any precaution. You didn't request it. You're not expecting it, so on and so forth. And we have no idea if the people actually, the voters that were on the roll actually even knew that they were getting these ballots.
Exactly right, Christi. And this map, keep it up for just a moment more if you don't mind, Christi. The concern is the states in yellow and blue. Okay, yellow, as you said, most of the votes were mailed to people whether they requested them or not. The blue states, you could be 25 years old, same in the yellow states, but
hold on. When you're saying, okay, so blue, are you calling this dark purple?
Well, no, the baby blue, no excuse required.
Okay, no excuse.
Like North Dakota, Minnesota.
This is teal, like a teal green. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Teal
green. Okay.
You could be 25 years old and a fitness expert at LA Fitness, and you could vote by mail. Remember, absentee ballot is for people that are handicapped and elderly and sick and hospice who still have a right to vote. It was never intended to be opened up like this to where you can be a picture of health and 25 years old and you can still ballot harvest, you can still vote by mail, you can still rob someone's mailbox after you see the post office postman drop it off. Who knows? They have $12,000 laser printers now that are so good that they even can measure to the millimeter the width of the pen that you put the check mark on your ballot. They have printers that are $12,000 that even experts, you can't tell the difference. So the concern is that those yellow states, if they spread and we become a nation, Christi and Christi's American Patriot viewers, we come to a country of 80% vote by mail only. We are never going to know who really won and who really lost an election. And the states in blue, you can vote in person, but you're not going to be questioned whatsoever if you request to vote by mail. As you see, no excuse required. The only states that went back to pre-COVID are the states in the dark purple, like Indiana, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. And I think, I can check, but I think those states that are in the light purple, I don't think COVID-19 fears is an excuse anymore. I think those are now excuse required states. There's 13 total states out of 50 that went back to the law. Only 13 out of 50. Mm-hmm. So the biggest concern is that the vote by mail, basically the yellow, if that spreads, we're in big trouble. But it's not going to. It's not going to. It's going to actually be going the other way.
Yellow and this light green too. Mm-hmm. The tealish color green here. Yes. That is a concern, John. And that's the majority of our nation, ladies and gentlemen. We're even talking about Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maine, Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arizona, Wyoming, and Idaho. Right. You just heard me between that and us talking about the yellow states, which is Washington State, Oregon, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Montana, and California. We are talking about the majority of the United States, only leaving a few states left. Because I can tell you here in the great state of Florida, it is very easy for people to get their mail-in ballots. And if someone wanted to ballot harvest, they could. So, it would be very easy for them to do, and it's very hard for them to track down, because we are living in a state, even Freedom, Florida, has politicians that aren't even living in the area that they are serving or I should say, they're supposed to be serving citizens in. So, it is one of those states where I almost am on the verge of classifying Florida as the biggest elderly abuse state, like in the United States of America, because we have so many elderly and people preying on the elderly, potentially, allegedly paying for votes for the elderly or workers that are working directly in the election system. So it's definitely something that we have to stop. And so, John, let's talk about what President Trump is going to be doing in terms of what is he going to be doing to prevent this?
Okay, so the bottom line is we were getting nowhere because the Constitution does say the states have primarily 100% power. And then after 7 weeks, I found that codicil. And then, as I said,
you said codicil. Talk about what the codicil is.
Yes, the codicil is what no one knew about, but I found it. The codicil is the oversight mechanism for the states having 100% power. In other words, the framers say in the codicil that they're putting it in to have a two-tier system for election integrity, both the federal and state level. So bottom line is the states do have 100% power until they start favoring one side or the other. And it also goes on to say that the states cannot use their power of elections to dictate electoral outcomes unfairly or, and this is a key line, or use their power to, use their power to favor or disfavor one class of candidates or another. Well, they've done that, right? Mm-hmm. Donald Trump was taken off the ballot in 5 or 6 states. The Supreme Court overruled it, but the states did it. So they have overstepped this codicil because, again, the codicil says the moment that the states are biased, I'll put it in layman's terms for the viewers. Mm-hmm. The moments the states are not playing it down the middle and showing favoritism to one candidate or one party or the other, Congress is supposed to step in at that point. That never happened. And that codicil would have actually been Donald Trump's best defense if we had known about it after the 2020 election. Remember, he was going to court saying it's wrong, but he didn't have anything in his hand. And so he lost. He lost those cases. But if he had had that codicil that showed that the states violated the Constitution, who knows what would have happened, but it certainly would have been better than going empty-handed and just hoping the court agrees with you. And but we know about it now. So the first breaking news of this show is all your viewers know, next time you hear someone tell you, there's nothing you can do if the states cheat. The Constitution says they have 100% power. You now know, since you are watching Patriots Perspective, you're one of the few people in this entire country that knows that's false. The states, there is an accountability codicil. And to elaborate on that, it was also mentioned in a 1995 Supreme Court decision. And I will tell the viewers quickly about that, Christi. In 1995, there was a challenge to the states on term limits. Okay? The states wanted to keep term limits, no limit on term limits. And there was a challenge from some Republican groups that there should be term limits. Okay? Well, the Supreme Court did rule with the states that they had the decision over the term limits. But then they went on to say exactly what the codicil said, that they cannot use that power to favor one class of candidates or the other. And they obviously knew about the codicil because they used the word dictate. Remember, I told you in the Constitution it says they cannot dictate electoral outcomes unfairly. In the 1995 written decision, even though the states won as far as the term limits, the Supreme Court also advised them, don't let that ruling make you think that you can just run wild with elections And so the written response by the majority of the Supreme Court also said what the codicil said, that you're going to lose your power if you abuse it. And there you go. Let's see if we can.
So in 1995, the Supreme Court addressed the issue of term limits of members of Congress in the landmark case U.S. Term Limits versus Thornton. The court, in a 5-4 decision, ruled that the states cannot impose stricter qualifications for prospective members of U.S. Congress than those already specified in the Constitution. This may not be it. This may not be the exact one that you're referring to. Because you just said that yours was about the states, given the states' rights. This is about Congress specifically.
Right. No problem. No problem. No problem. I'll read you the decision right now, the way the Supreme Court.
What is the Supreme Court case? Do you have the case number?
I'm gonna see right now, but I can tell you 150% that the Supreme Court, despite ruling for the states on the case, they gave them a long lecture in the written decision on if they get carried away with their power. And I'm going to find it for you right now, because it is important. But the thing the viewers need to know over everything else is that the states are not free to cheat without any consequences. And we have thought for many, many, many years that was the case, right?
Yeah.
So
if the Supreme Court case makes or breaks the difference, then that's
okay. So here, I've got it for you.
Okay.
So in that term limit case that the Supreme Court ruled with the states, that they decide if there's term limits in their states or not. This was what the Supreme Court said as far as election integrity in that ruling. They said,
wait, what's the name of the case? Let's bring it up, because I like to show people exactly what we're talking about.
You know what? I am not sure. It's the only. How many cases of term limits were there in 1995?
Let me see. That's what. Evidently, there were several.
Okay.
So.
But I still will read you what they said.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Yep.
Okay. So.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, be sure you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you have also look in the links. I'll have all of John's information there shortly after the show, including his X channel, where he has a lot of great information regarding election integrity. And then I also want to remind you to be on the call on Tuesday, where Mike Lindell, General Flynn, Monday, where a lot of great people are going to be on talking about things. But again, you are hearing what we're about to break here first, and that is regarding President Trump's executive.
Yeah, we'll go into that right now. So,
okay.
So the bottom.
I'm a big believer. We are at 33 minutes, and we've got to give the audience what we're here for.
All right.
So I know if I'm listening and I'm spending my time, I'm like, Christi, I want to know what's going on here. What is the breaking news? What is President Trump going to do? How are we going to fix it? A lot of them already know the problems, because the big part of my audience are election brigaders here from Miami-Dade County. They know the problems that we believe were there in 2020, and even still right now. I mean, there's still issues going on the city of Miami, John. I mean, there's we literally have politicians.
Miami's a tough spot right now.
That we are trying to. The city of Miami is literally trying to remove votes from a ballot. At this very moment, sadly, we have candidates that are having to sue. We have candidate Emilio Gonzalez, who is a retired colonel out of the United States Army. He's basically having to sue July the 16th. I will be posting those court details on my Twitter feed, and it'll be on via VFAF War Room. That's Veterans for America First War Room. That's at VFAF War Room. So if you're not already following that, make sure that you do go on and follow, because that is a really big deal. Because we have to support Colonel Emilio Gonzalez. He is the City of Miami mayoral candidate who used to be for a very short term, he was the city manager because they did not want to give him any of the contracts that he was supposed to be negotiating and signing, and they didn't want to give him any of the details to be able to basically be able to do his job. I mean, it's insane. He says, like you've got this position that you're supposed to know about these things. You're supposed to be technically, the city manager is the highest person within the city government, technically, even over the commissioners. They're supposed to be managing the entire city, and you won't give him the contracts? I mean, come on. I mean, who's the gatekeeper holding back the contracts? I mean, I think a lot of people know what the problem is, and I'm going to tell you, I think we're in a lot of big trouble in the United States, in a lot of these major cities, John, including New York and Chicago. But I will tell you, when I met with General Flynn in 2023, he said, Miami is a beautiful mess, but it might be a bigger mess than Chicago, New York, and LA combined. And that's because of the language barrier, because of the Cuban mafia that came over during the Cuban Missile Crisis and all of that. So that's the reason a lot of times we may hear people like Juan Osava talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And
so I'm going to pick up the pace for you now, okay? Now we're going to pick up the pace, okay? Everybody stand by, fasten your seatbelt. Here we go, okay? All right, so first of all, you've already know that the states don't have 100% power if they abuse it. That is breaking news, because I guarantee you 95% of the population in this country has no idea about this codicil. Okay, none. But now you do. Now, I told you, besides that codicil, the Supreme Court in that term limits case ruled for the states on the term limits. But this is what they had to say, and I'm going to quote. And if anybody wants to find the case, they're going to see the same quote, because I only talk facts. And that's why I am where I am.
He's really big on that. He wanted to make sure that there was even no conspiracy theories talking about.
Right.
Because I've been called a conspiracy theorist.
So the Supreme Court said to them that their rights as states is to enforce procedural safeguards to ensure elections are fair, honest, and orderly. That is in the written decision. And then they went on to say that state laws cannot go beyond, quote, protection of the integrity and regularity of the election process, and instead operate to disadvantage a particular class of candidates or negate the need for a general election. Straight from the Supreme Court in 1995. So that was another option I gave Donald Trump. Okay, so he had the national security option of, as you mentioned, Christi, which is the one I think he's probably going to take. The national security option, where we have so many ballots floating in the mail.
First of all, we've missed the point, John. We've missed the point. President Trump has an executive order on his desk right now. He has a draft executive order.
He does.
And we don't know exactly what it says at this very moment, but we do know that there is a draft executive order that has been reviewed. It actually came out with Jerome Corsi. And Dr. Jerome Corsi, we all know he's been an advocate with President Trump. He did not blow the whistle on President Trump. And between this Supreme Court case, John, your work in finding what is going on with the Constitution,
the codicil
itself, President Trump is going to...
Yes, Mike Lindell last Thursday took my materials. It was a 12-minute video. I was speaking directly to President Trump. I was saying President Trump. And he took it straight to the West Wing. He had an appointment with President Trump, and he gave it to Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, and he gave it to the in-house legal counsel, Will Scharf. And the very next day, something happened quick, because the very next day, the New York Times, I think you have that, maybe not. The New York Times headline talks about the DOJ is now going to be relooking at elections, and they are threatening charges against election officials that don't follow the law. And that came out the day after my materials went to President Trump. The options I gave President Trump that I knew would be able to stand up was, number one, we've been using absentee ballot for 250 years. Number two, he has this Supreme Court decision that says if the states overstep, they lose it. He has the codicil, okay? And the bottom line is, I did get confirmation today. And this is breaking news, folks, okay? So please be happy. President Trump and his staff are currently drafting an executive order concerning election integrity. And we don't know what's in it yet, but we do believe that it's going to deal with several issues, one of them being national vote by mail. And this is why national vote by mail, it's not just that it's not in the law, but think about this, right? That came out the day after my materials ended up in the West Wing. Funny how that was the day after. And that's the New York Times, I believe. Yes, it is.
New York Times. Justice Department explodes using criminal charges against election officials. Such a path could drastically raise the stakes for federal investigations and state or county officials, bringing the department and the threat of criminalization into the election system.
Which means that they're going to think twice before they cheat, because now there's going to be consequences.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I want your viewers to know, and this is a very important point, Christi, the reason why we've had so much fraud since 2020 is this. When we're going by the law of absentee ballot, which is just going to the people that qualify, like we said, the elderly, the handicapped, overseas military, that's about 6 to 8 million ballots in the mailing system. But during this national vote by mail scam, it's well over 50 million. Can you imagine? Think about that. Just as your viewer, think about that. 8 million in the mail ballots versus 50 million in the mail.
That's a big difference.
That's a fact. So by taking national vote by mail out and bringing the law of absentee ballot back in, we have just taken tens of millions of ballots out of the mailing system where we don't know who's getting them, where they're going. So it's like 2 + 2 = 4, right? You take 30 or 40 million ballots out of the mail, you're going to have less fraud. And so the bottom line is, you can be rest assured that there is an executive order pending at the White House. It is currently being drafted, and the word I have is that there'll be some actual signing action later this month, August. You know, that is very good. And I don't know what's in it, but I'm going to believe that absentee ballot is coming back, because Donald Trump knows that when you have 60 million ballots in our system, it breeds fraud. And I would not be surprised to see something along the lines of hand count paper ballots, because the voting machines have also been proven that the algorithms have been tampered with in many occasions. And so going back to old school hand count is maybe not the fastest way, but it's the most honest way. And so we'll wait and see. As soon as I get the executive order, I'm going to make sure Christi has it, and maybe we'll come back on the show and we'll analyze the executive order and how it now has changed things versus before the executive order.
Exactly.
The before and after.
Well, so one of the things, John, that I wanted you to know here is that, even when we've reported situations, when ballots have arrived open, when machines appear not to have their clamps on them, sometimes our election board has been ignored. And when it comes to, the board itself, the election board is basically the people that show up to make sure that your machines and the ballots and everything are supposed to be orderly and put together. You can see directly on electionbrigade.com where we filed a report with the supervisor of elections in Miami-Dade County when the election board could not even get through. When they called the county, they said, "Oh, well, we knew that those ballots were open." Well, why were they open? There's no excuse for it. They're not supposed to be. They're also not supposed to any of that stuff's not supposed to be open before the election board actually arrives. And then here it's been an education process of getting people to understand that, notaries matter. When it comes to, who's notarizing your document, they cannot directly turn around and directly benefit from the notarization. So there's been a plethora of things and potential alleged fraud that has gone on inside the system itself. And then the other thing that I think that President Trump, that I want the audience to know, because we've talked about this before, is his executive orders that he has covered in the past. And then I wanted to show the executive order. This is Executive Order 13848 from 2018. This was written on September 12th, 2018. The executive order basically says, with the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the National Emergencies Act, and the Immigration and National Act of 1952 and Section 301 of Title III of the United States Code. So think about what we have going on here. We have a national emergency going on with the immigration. So we're trying to get immigrants out of our country right now. So that's the reason in Florida we have alligator Alcatraz. So think about all the things that are going on. But President Trump goes on to say that they found the ability for the persons to be located in whole or part outside the United States to interfere, undermine public confidence in the United States elections, including through unauthorized accessing of elections and campaign infrastructure or the covert distribution of propaganda or disinformation, constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Well, John, I can tell you right there that we know that those things have happened. We know that there's been propaganda produced. So President Trump has an outlet there from 2018.
Well, that's the executive order that at the start of the show I was telling you that was one of his options that he could fall back on because this executive order, basically, it's not just for him. It gives presidents in the future authority to interject in elections if there is proof of election interference from an outside entity or outside country. And we have that proof now. I believe that's the path he's going to take on the executive order bringing back absentee. I believe that's going to be.
And then we also have to wonder, with everything that is happening, and I'm reading directly from another article now from the WashingtonTimes.com. This article was written in June 17th, 2025. So just less than a month ago. So about 3 weeks ago. The FBI intelligence links China to alleged interference in 2020 election.
Yeah, what happened there, Christi, was China made many, many, many hundreds of thousands fake IDs, and they got them to Chinese nationals who are here in the United States, who were allowed to be here on visas, but they were not allowed to vote. But because it was 100% vote by mail, they were able to get it through. And that is a problem. And that's another exact reason that if we were using absentee vote, there would only be a fraction of those number of votes in the mailing system and not enough for China or other countries to interfere. That's exactly one of the four options that I presented to President Trump, because it's all about getting the 50 million ballots floating around aimlessly around our country. Once we have that down to normal 5 or 6 million for absentee, we're going to get a big chunk of fraud taken out of our elections. And I did find the actual quote that you had asked about earlier from the Constitution, where they're actually addressing what they perceive the framers. And this is Judge Clarence Thomas saying the framers understood the Elections Clause, which is my codicil. They call it the Elections Clause. The framers understood the Elections Clause as a grant of authority to issue procedural regulations to the states, but not as a source of power to dictate electoral outcomes to favor or disfavor a class of candidates or to evade important constitutional restraints. Notice they use the word dictate, which is exactly the word that's used in the Constitution in that codicil. So
Yep.
I believe the Supreme Court did know about that codicil, and they should. They're the highest judges in the land. But the fact that our people on TV, I'm not going to put anyone out there, but the fact that I've talked to several of them, the fact of people you see on TV that are like the constitutional scholars, the legal experts, they didn't even know about this codicil. And it's a good thing I found it, because the states have been telling us for years, you can't touch us. The Constitution says we have 100% power. While we're on this topic, I also want to tell you something else that's very relevant, Christi. I want your listeners and your viewers to understand how important the midterms are next year. It's not just as far as ending the cheat, that's important, but if the Democrats use the national mail-in ballots as a weapon like they did in 2020, and the House is taken over by the Democrats, number one, Donald Trump's agenda will be stopped in its tracks, because the Democrat Speaker of the House is not going to bring anything from Donald Trump down to the floor any more than Nancy Pelosi would. And on top of that, we all know they're going to start the impeachment parade on Donald Trump almost immediately. So it's multifaceted, this problem. And so we have to go ahead and make sure this executive order, which is going to come through, you've got the breaking news, and I'm sure it's going to address absentee ballots back in. And the only people voting by mail is if you qualify for that. It'll take tens of millions of votes out of the mail, lowering the fraud big time. And countries like China won't have enough ballots floating around to be able to perpetrate the fraud. But also, Donald Trump would be at very grave risk politically if these nationwide vote by mail stays intact, because again, the Democrats, let me just say it, the Democrats know that the midterms are their last chance to knock Donald Trump out. And look, they've been trying to knock him out since day one. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Look at Russia, right? Special counsel Bill Mueller, a Democrat, one of the most respected Democrats at the time. 2 years, $3 million investigation. And I'll never forget, he announced, I have come to my conclusions and I'll be back in Congress tomorrow to give you the results. And I remember the Democrats going, oh, we got him now. We got him now.
Yep.
Because Bill Mueller was a loyal Democrat. And I give Bill Mueller credit, because he came back in front of Congress after that 2-year investigation and said, I not only can't find any Russian collusion with Donald Trump in Russia, I can't find any collusion between Donald Trump and any country.
Yeah.
And I have never heard that chamber so silent, Christi, in my entire life. So, but they still perpetrated that Russia, even though their own special counsel said no. And then the Vladimir Zelensky phone call that they tried to impeach him on, right? Who's the best witness on a questionable phone call?
Well, and let's talk about now too, John, what's actually happening right now. Meanwhile, we have on Twitter, we have what's trending is Epstein, hate Trump. Like all of a sudden this hate Trump. Okay. While he is about to have this election EO taking us back to the normal state of elections, per our Constitution. Yeah, while this is happening. But I want everybody to think about this. At this very moment, right now, we have Pam Bondi that's, it's on Twitter. She has embarrassed Trump, absolutely, by not Trump and the FBI. So we have FBI Director Dan Bongino is not at work today because he has said, you know what? I am so embarrassed by our Attorney General's office and her statement saying, that the Epstein files didn't exist, and like looking at President Trump, like what she was saying. And listen, she was there working with him, and we never know everything. But the reality is, we have all this mass chaos going on. And is that a big distraction for Kash Patel uncovering a proof former FBI bosses buried evidence that China interfered with our 2020 election as he vows to take action? Okay, so why do we want to leave Kash when he's saying that he's going to take action on these things? We are not. So Kash, if you're listening to this, I fully support you, man, for moving forward with this. And Kash, very few people know that Kash Patel actually used to be a Miami Attorney General. So he's worked in the Miami Attorney General's office. So he knows the craziness that goes on here. He knows the craziness that most likely happens in the elections. It's my understanding they hate his guts over in the Attorney General's office. So we need Kash. We need him to take action. And as Republicans, we need to support the people who are taking actions. Listen, if Pam Bondi is not taking action, and she's, there must be a reason. She was sitting right beside President Trump when she's making those statements, and I can't imagine him not saying something if he wanted to about Epstein. So, but I just want to say, listen, I agree. Listen, I've done a lot. I've done a lot regarding Epstein. I have a lot more to cover regarding Epstein. I have interviewed people who were hurt by Epstein. I've been to the West Palm Epstein mansion. But right now, I need us to focus on elections, because that is where we, like John said, it's going to make or break whether or not what we see in our future. And that is what the Chinese Communist Party, they don't want us to see this. They want us focused on Epstein right now. They do not want us focused on them and our FBI uncovering that the Chinese they did interfere with the 2020 election, because that right there, Kash posted on June the 24th, 2025. That's been about just a couple of weeks ago. Don't think that President Trump is not going to take over. Additionally, at the same time, Kash actually shared this. He says, here is the link. Here's the article from the Daily Mail. Isn't it weird that that the Daily Mail was the one to actually release this article stating that that the FBI bosses, former FBI bosses, had buried evidence. So, that has to come out a lot of times, believe it or not. Even our election news here in Miami-Dade County right now is coming out on the Daily Mail in the UK. I mean, it's the craziest thing. And then look how few of shares. I mean, if this were Epstein, this would have, tens of thousands of shares. But considering it doesn't, 1,000 measly little shares, and the FBI director shared this with us. I mean, come on, people have said arrests have to start happening, treason, start arresting people for the love of God, so people do want to see things fixed. They want
Well, it's my understanding, Christi, that Kash Patel actually has a lot of those fake IDs in his possession. So whether the Daily Mail leaked it out before Kash Patel mentioned it, it doesn't change the fact that it happened.
No, I think he actually posted that article. He wanted them to. But what I'm saying is our own news outlets did not cover that. It's people like you and me, John, who are online using our time. We're not getting paid. We're not funded by USAID to come on and produce any propaganda, or even come on and, we're not funded to even tell the truth. I mean, the reality is people like us have to step up, and we have to unite. Democrats, listen here. Have an interview with the Libertarian chair of Miami-Dade County. I want everybody to listen to that. It's going to come out tomorrow. So you're not even
Was it
going to believe it.
contentious? Was it contentious?
Actually, no, it's actually great. Hey, listen,
Okay.
the libertarians are the ones who invited President Trump to speak. They invited me to speak when I run for office, and even about election integrity issues. They are really the very, very concerned crowd in Miami-Dade County. So, I wanted him to come on, and I wanted to, I'm always trying to tell them, like, listen. So he says something very important in that interview, John. Like, I'm not even going to tell our audience here because you have to go on and listen to it,
When is
because
it? When will it air? When will it?
Saturday night. Yep.
Okay, you'll
Night,
text me and I'll watch it. You'll
night.
text me.
I have another journalist coming on that has breaking news. So Saturday night, that interview with Hector Roos will come on, and people are not even going to believe what Hector says, what his recommendations are, and what we need to be doing in election wise moving forward. He has a call to action to the Libertarian Party, and Libertarian Parties was the one who got President Trump elected as well. So they get 100% credit for. They endorsed him at the very end. They had him speak at their national convention, and I will say, we have to remember, we've had Chinese infiltrators everywhere. Okay. I mean, I'm telling you, I've had them follow me, track me, my websites. Like, you can't even make this stuff up. I mean, so,
The reason China is always trying to get Trump, it's very simple with that, because no one is tougher on China than Trump when it comes to their shenanigans, and no one tariffs China when they pull their shenanigans like Donald Trump. When Joe Biden and Obama are in office, China runs rampant all over the place. And reports that I'm reading, these tariffs are actually affecting the Chinese economy in a very negative way. And that's why they're all of a sudden deciding they want to talk to Trump about making a deal. Remember, we were supposed to be in a recession right now, right? As soon as Donald Trump
right.
did the tariffs. Well, I don't see the recession. Actually, I see prices lower.
Well, and then I also, like when it comes to taking action, people, again, they're wanting the FBI, they want to throw the FBI under the bus. They want to throw Dan and Cash and Blondie under the bus, Blondie, as Laura Loomer calls her. Here I was trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, maybe some too much benefit of the doubt, but at the same time produce the facts. I mean, here on July the 1st, Cash posted from the FBI Director Cash Patel X page, 2 Chinese nationals were caught spying on our Navy and trying to recruit American service members for the CCP's intel service. Our FBI won't stand for it. We tracked them, we stopped them, and we're not done yet. Espionage on U.S. soil will be met with full force. 2 Chinese nationals were arrested on Navy personnel bases. That was actually covered by Greg Winter for Fox News. Okay. So there's a lot going on that I think we are not, maybe privy to, a lot of information that we're not.
And this is John Solomon, I would assume, here with just the news.
Yeah.
Because he was one of the first ones to pick up on this Chinese voting scheme. That's what he called it in his article. I think you have a picture of that.
Yeah. I pulled this up as well. So this is
but there's a picture of John Solomon doing the same thing. And the bottom line is Donald Trump, I believe that when he goes back to absentee ballot and does away with national vote by mail, I believe he's going to use the national security angle based on what we now know with China. He's got several legal options, but let's be very frank about it. What are the 2 areas that the President of the United States has the broadest powers? Pardons and national security issues. And now Joe Biden, he misused those pardons, but that's a different day for a different discussion. But as far as national security, the president has very broad powers. And now that we have conclusive proof that China was sending fake IDs into Chinese nationals who were here either in school or on tourism. They were allowed to be in the country but not vote, but they were voting because of the phony fake IDs. And so now we have interference from China. And one of the few things that the Republicans and Democrats agree on is that China is a big issue for the United States. So I think that's the option he's going to take. I gave him 4 options that would all be constitutional legal, but I do think it's going to end up being the national security angle. But the bottom line today, folks, is that please take away from this show 2 things from me, and that is, number 1, the states are accountable if they cheat. And we've been brought up for many years because, in the Constitution, it's one of the first things. I mean, it's not even deep in the Constitution. I think it's on the top of the second page of the Constitution where it says
if either side cheats, or if anything happens, or if any politician is allowed to choose the next round of politicians for you, we're in a lot of trouble. And,
right.
And even when it comes to funding, I think that's next. I think there will be an executive order next because we've had everybody from Bernie Sanders to Rick Scott talking about, if we don't.
No, we can break that now. We have confirmation. Confirmation that there is, as we speak, they're drafting an election integrity executive order. And then we also have the release from the DOJ saying enough of this election fraud. We're not going to tolerate it. And if we catch you as an election official cheating, then we're going to press charges. And I think one way that would come in handy is when he goes back to absentee, the only votes that should be going out in the mail are to people that qualify. But if the states start sending them out in big bunches to people that are not eligible for absentee vote, that would be violating his executive order, and they could be charged. So he's putting the states on notice that if you continue to fraud our elections, you're going to jail. And that's the bottom line in layman's terms. And it has to be said because this has been going on too long. And look, Christi and me, we can both accept if our candidate loses, if it's a fair election. I mean, it's a democracy. If you lose, you lose. But you can't lose on the rig. If you lose when everything was on the up and up, hey, you gave it your best shot.
And our Department of Justice in 2021 said we are aware of multiple public claims that one or more foreign governments, including Venezuela, Cuba, or China, owned, directed, or controlled election infrastructure used in the 2020 federal elections, implemented a scheme to manipulate election infrastructure, or tallied, changed, or otherwise manipulated vote counts. Following the election, the Department of Justice, including the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security, including CISA, which is CISA, investigated the public claims and determined that they are not credible. So they knew about it, they lied about it. So whoever is part of this, they are in a lot of trouble.
And sometimes I'll say, I'm worried we're going to end up being Venezuela. And I'm old, okay? I'm old. Christi's young. I'm old.
I'm not as young as I look, John. But
then you'll have to text me what supplements you're taking because I need a few. Okay? But I remember when Venezuela, before Maduro, was a democracy, a tourist hotspot, people friendly, Americans going over there to vacation. What happened? Maduro ran for president and the elections were rigged. And he's still there. And now it is a dictatorship, socialist, communist country. It started the same way this has started. That's why you see the emotion. That's why you see the persistence. That's why you hear Christi saying, we cannot have rigged elections.
No.
I mean, we can disagree on a zoning law. We can disagree whether we want pineapple or strawberry ice cream. But we're talking about elections, folks.
Right.
Steer the power of our country and the direction of our country. And so the reason you hear people say Venezuela is because they used to be a free, beautiful democracy. And once the elections went rigged, look where Venezuela is now. And that's why we are very concerned about this because, and not to mention, without this executive order, elections could be rigged for your kids, your grandkids, their kids. This could go on for decades.
Well, I was going to say, John, and the other thing, think about this too. This is something that I've advocated for President Trump to consider. I don't know if there's a way for this, after we're done with what we're done with here regarding the election executive order, is everybody needs to think about this. Okay. If I move to the Dominican Republic, I cannot even run for as much as a mayor unless I am Dominican, and I have to be second generation Dominican to even run for mayorship. So in other words, I cannot control anything. I cannot oversee people because they have their system set up where it's always going to be somebody that they know. And people would turn around and say, well, Christi, the Dominican Republic is corrupt. Yes, it is. I'm not trying to say that it's not. However, there is a system in place where they do not allow just anybody to come in, because if you think it's corrupt now, can you imagine what it would be like if people were not able to actually, if anybody was just able to move there and start running for office. Whereas here in the United States of America, the Miami elections that are in question, that are going to court on July the 16th, that's next week. So here we actually have, believe it or not, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Okay. And I'm just going to say this. On both sides, we basically have non-generational Americans, or maybe Americans, who knows? Because in Miami, you don't even have to prove that you're a citizen. You check a box saying that you are.
But there's no vetting.
Right? There's no vetting whatsoever.
Right.
There's no vetting that you live here. There's no vetting. In other words, I can rent an apartment and turn around and register to vote here. Okay. And maybe I move away the next day, or I run for office and I still move away. I mean, there are politicians that we have that are allegedly live in different areas than they service. So that really came out during our sheriff's race, where we had multiple sheriff's candidates that didn't even live inside Miami-Dade County running for Miami-Dade County Sheriff. Well, how can you actually have a sheriff that doesn't really live here? And we hadn't had a sheriff in 62 years. So that was kind of very concerning. So we have Bob from Knoxville, Tennessee checking in. So Bob, I hope that you go back and look and see that you're on the map, that Tennessee was one of those. You're going to have to just don't put your blinders on, whatever you do. Don't even put your sunglasses on. Make sure that you go with eyes wide open to your elections. And I also want to encourage people to go to not only to your site, John, and your site is, can you give the URL for it?
Yeah. x.com at John Goo, JOHNGOO 77697793. And I do a weekly episode called John Goodman Comments, and usually get a couple 100,000 views. And I mean, I'm not a national figure. I'm on the election integrity.
Oh, you are, John.
But, so that's why people are surprised that I was able to get through to, this election integrity thing, EO. But again, I want to make sure it's clear, and let me make sure I get this out, Christi. I'm just one person. The bottom line is the Florida Election Integrity Committee as a team has supported the work I'm doing. And when this when this executive order is signed, the Florida Election Integrity Committee as a team should stand proud.
And do they have a website, John? Is there a website that people can go to for that? Because I know I'm going to send them to Defend Florida as well.
Well, why don't we give them Steve Stern's website? Because Steve gets a lot of emails, and he is totally fine with that. And I will give that to you right now.
I've got his. I'll bring it up right now so we
got it. You got Steve's?
So we can show.
It's the 1054. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you to go here and sign up for the sternamerican.com, because he has all of his links there. Make sure you sign up for sternamerican.com.
That's my boss right there.
Yep. He has a link for the precinct strategy. You can also shop for Steve's.
That's Dan Schultz, by the way. It's Dan Schultz.
Yep.
Very, very, very precinct. Him and Steve Bannon are very well versed in precinct strategy.
Yep.
And very well versed. And Steve Stern's email, if you want to get involved, is sstern, STERN, 1054 at gmail.com. SSTERN, Stern, 1054 at gmail.com. He's a great guy, and he cares about this country, and he's a total patriot, not just in word, but in action. And he will give you the shirt off his back if you are legitimate. And I can't say enough about what a great boss he is on the committee, and he has supported me through this whole endeavor. Because look, I got frustrated a couple times. I'm looking for ways to end the rig before I found that codicil. And like you said, we're fighting against a lot of rhinos, Republicans in name only. So thank God for Steve Stern, Steve Bannon, and Mike Lindell. And I want to thank President Trump and Susie Wiles also, because they didn't have to look at a private citizen's materials. Sure, I'm on the Election Integrity Committee, but am I elected official? No, no. So when Donald Trump says he cares about the common person, the average American citizen, you can take it from my experience that it's true, because the West Wing doesn't have to give me the time of day, right? But yet they took my suggestions, reviewed them, and now we have confirmation that they're doing an executive order. So if you think as a private citizen you have no say-so in things, Donald Trump
do, for sure.
Donald Trump is backing up the fact that he listens to the people, because I don't have any inroad with Donald Trump. He doesn't know me more than the man on the moon, but yet he still was willing to look at what I had. And when he saw that it was legitimate, he told them to move forward, even though he knew I was a private citizen. So that's the love of Donald Trump that sometimes is overlooked, because he can be tough, but he also has a very compassionate side that some people and most people have never seen. And I think it's very compassionate to listen to your private citizens who are trying to help, and he did.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to make sure that people go to electionbrigade.com. This is the Miami-Dade County chapter website where you can actually register. And what we do is we send out notices for poll watchers, poll workers, and basically provide election oversight, because we actually believe in the strategy that Michelle Swinick believes in, that it's really something she started, that we should all be workers, the poll workers, because that's also how you're able to keep really good oversight, especially if you're retired. I really want to encourage our retirees, our military or servicemen, their families, to really get involved, because you'd be surprised at who sometimes is overseeing our elections themselves, and they're not people that are willing to report things. And sometimes they may be paid off, and we need good people in there to actually just watch and look and just make sure that things are, that the elections are not being run as a business, that's actually being run for citizens.
And now's a good time to get involved, because America is back. Let's be honest. We have countries calling us to make deals every day. I just saw the Prince in Saudi Arabia saying the United States is the hottest country in the world right now. And that wasn't Donald Trump says it, but other leaders are saying it. So
John, I want to know something. What do you want to see in this bill? Because I'm going to tell you what I want to see, but I want to hear what you want to see first.
I want to see two things. I want to see absentee vote, the law that we've used since 1775 to the pandemic. I want that back in, because it's already in the law. It has been. And I want national vote by mail gone, because it breeds fraud like it's nobody's business. And that will take, as we talked about earlier, tens of millions of ballots out of the mail, which will translate into much less vote by mail fraud. And I also want to see paper ballot hand count. I'm tired of the voting machines. They are too subjective. A Democrat technician can undo the back of it, I don't know computers, but on electronics, they can be adjusted, and they have.
I'm going to say any paid off. Any paid off person could do. And sometimes I think that these people don't even know what they're doing. So, I think there's a good chance that they have no idea what they're doing.
We have to go back to old school now because we're trying all these things, these fancy Dominion voting machines that, the numbers on the voting machines do not match the number of ballots cast. Well, I mean, that's a huge red flag.
If they don't, for sure. Yeah. We haven't shown proof that they don't. So, okay. So what I would like to see is one vote, one day, and and on paper ballots. That's the way that our forefathers did it. That's the way that we're going.
No early voting. No early voting.
I want no early voting unless you're military and that you have an absolute excuse, doctor's order. Doctor's order or military orders, you don't get a mail-in ballot at all. You have to show your plane ticket. You have to show your citizenship paperwork. You have to go through a lot of hoops in order to get that ballot if you are not voting in person. And then I also would like that no mask whatsoever. I hate to have to say this, but in Miami-Dade County, I have to say it, that masks are prohibited in a voting station because the person checking you in with your ID cannot see your face and your driver's license at the same time to know that that's you. The other thing I would like to see is our signatures, that whenever we sign in, that we have a 15-point test on those signatures. Right now, I think some states have it lowered down to 1. So in other words, on a 1 check, it's very hard to actually know if a signature matches up because it only has to have 1 checkpoint. Whereas the 15 checkpoint, I believe, is something that we're supposed to have anyway, but that's not being done. So I'm hoping that President Trump's executive order also.
I like that, Christi, because the signature is very important. Because part of the fraud of the mail-in ballots in 2020 is the ballots would come back, but the signatures either were not verified, or they were phony signatures, or the ballots came back in just a plain white envelope. There is a return envelope with a vote by mail absentee ballot that have a scan code, so they can make sure that the name on the ballot inside the envelope matches the name and address on the scan code. But they counted all those votes in 2020. It's one of the reasons, as I said, 81 million votes. There's no way.
The other thing, John, that is if somebody is willing to run for office and if there's ever a candidate that questions the election or just wants to see the ballots afterwards, I think we pay enough in taxes that we should be able to go and review those ballots after the election. For instance, in the case of my election, it was very unclear. I mean, there was literally only 300 ballots cast. I mean, how hard is that to see 300 ballots? You're going to want to charge me $4,500 or some ridiculous amount to review ballots in an election that I've already had to pay a fee a lot of times to be a part of. You have to pay a fee when you're a candidate to enter. And I would also like to see the fees done away with at all so that it brings us back to people who maybe could not afford to run. And then I would really love to see our elections, our politicians to be limited in the number of campaign finances. I'd love to see all these PACs done away with so that it could be down to, hey, may the best candidate win and may the best person win.
There's always been some fraud in elections, Christi, but it's never been to this magnitude. But the bottom line is there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's coming soon. It's coming soon to a voting station near you.
Great, John. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to be out on that. God bless you, everybody. Make sure that you do like, subscribe, comment below. Tell us where you're listening in at, and give John a follow. Make sure that you give him a follow. Let him know that you saw him here on Patriots Perspective. God bless everybody.
Remember, take action. Take action. Don't let big tech win. Share this video with a friend now. Most importantly, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.